It's just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Gabriel Asulin, who's an international expert in the management and marketing of dental practices and the author of the book, Turn Your Dental Practice into a Successful Business, the Gabriel Asulin Method. The book has been translated into Spanish, Russian, Bulgarian, Hebrew. Right now it's being translated into Ukrainian. It is considered a bestseller in the global dentistry market. The book also was chosen for Amazon's #1 bestseller in dentistry last year. In recent years, Gabriel is considered a guru in the field of marketing and promoting dental clinics worldwide, having consulted for hundreds of dental practices around the world. Gabriel has developed unique methods in the field that are successfully implemented in a great many practices. In recent years, he's considered to be a sought-after lecturer worldwide, and his lecture, Double Your Dental Practice Sales Within 3 Months, have become blockbusters in China, Colombia, Mexico, Russia, Bulgaria, Israel, and the Dominican Republic. I love your book. I love everything about you. Thank you so much for coming on the show. How are you doing today?
Good. I'm fine. Thank you. It's a pleasure for me to be here.
My gosh, I can't tell if you're a dental consultant or a model. You look like a GQ model in your jacket and your hair, your desk. My gosh, I hope that people, I hope they're listening to this on iTunes today and not looking at me compete with you on YouTube. But, you've been in dentistry a long time, and there's always been a lot of bad guys in dentistry. When I got on 87, it was a new HMO, it was the capitation, insurance. Now it's the DSO. The solo practicing dentist doesn't want to compete against somebody who has 100 offices. But there's always a bad guy, and I don't think they are bad guys. I think they're all competition, and there's always going to be competition. I had this argument with my sister the other day. One of her best friend's mom, a guy she used to date, the mom died, and she wants to go to the wedding, but she's like, well, her son's going to be there, and he's remarried, and his wife hates me. And I said, no, she doesn't hate you. It's a backhanded compliment. She sees you as a competitive threat. You used to date her husband, so the hating is not hating. She's giving you a compliment that you're a very competitive little girl, and she doesn't want you around her husband. But so I think competition is good because I saw it with DSOs where before there were DSOs, if one of my grandchildren, if I passed away and was dead, and one of my grandchildren fell off her bike on a Sunday and broke her front tooth off, there wasn't one dentist open in the state of Arizona. But now that you start having big corporate chains, Arizona finally has one dental office that's open 7 days a week. So I think, well, the patient won, my granddaughter won, the dentist might not like competing, but we're competing for the patients. But do you think it's far more competitive today than it was when you first entered the dental industry decades ago?
Absolutely. And I think the competition is good. And I always say that the most competitive, you are the most competitive to yourself. It's all in your hand. And if you run, and there is always excuses why not to succeed. There is economy, there is a pandemic, and there is a lot of excuses and competition. But if you run your dental practice as a business and you run it well, so you can succeed, and that's the most important thing.
And by the way, I feel like I can't say anything till I first say a shout out to Rafi Fisher, who I had dinner with in Israel. It was right before the pandemic started. It was I had dinner with him. I'm looking it up right now. It was on December 10th, 2019. Rafi told me he loved you. You were the man. He told me I got to hook up with you, all this stuff like that. But what was funny is I was there a whole week. And no one ever mentioned a coronavirus. It wasn't even a thing. And then when I came back from that, that was December 10th. It was right before Christmas. And then I went to Texas and stayed with my four grandchildren with my oldest son. And I remember I think it was after Christmas that I heard like one news story about some virus in Wuhan. But my gosh, so shout out to Rafi. Is he?
Yeah, he's a good friend of mine, and I will definitely send him your hello. And I want to tell you something that the coronavirus, I mean, the last year was very, very good for dental practices in Israel. And my clients who I coach raised in about 25 to 30% in sales turnovers in this in 2020 compared to 19. And I think the main reason is because all of the Israelis, all of the people stays here and nobody goes overseas. So, and they didn't spend a lot of money in overseas and they stayed here. And it was good in financial to the dentist in Israel.
So your book, I have four kids, and I always say I wrote a book too. I always say that writing a book is like having a baby. It takes 9 months to incubate a human, but it usually takes more than 9 months to write a book. You wrote a book, Turn Your Dental Practice into a Successful Business. The reviews, it only has 5-star reviews on Amazon, but it talks about it says, in this book, you will learn about how to attract new patients, how to retain existing patients, how to close big treatment plans, how to manage the reception area, how to perform an effective recall, how to improve the hygienist's productivity, how and where to advertise, what to consider before purchasing a new dental practice, how to reward the staff and increase their motivation, how to increase the clinic's profitability, how to deal with clients who perform a market survey, how to increase the amount of clinic recommendations. My God, we could do the whole newsletter just on this book, but I wanted to start with, we're not talking to normal people in sales. We're talking to dentists, and they will tell you right out of the gate. They'll say, "Yeah, I don't like sales," and you talk about treatment plan presentation. They go, I didn't go to school 8 years to be a used car salesman, and I always think to myself, it's tough because in America, the average American will buy 13 new cars between the ages of 16 and 76. So in 60 years, they're going to buy 13 cars with a median average price of $33,560. Yet 95% of all the dentists will go their whole life without selling one treatment plan for $33,000. And then we have companies like Clear Choice that charges $25,000 just for an arch of all-on-4, and they sell like 18,000 units a year. And then my dentist, you would come in and you look rich, you look famous, you look like a GQ model, and immediately they just downshift, and they're like, well, I'm not going to suggest that he buy a new car. I mean, I'm not a used car salesman. I'm just going to show Gabriel the worst tooth in his whole mouth and say, Gabriel, let's just work on the worst tooth in your whole head. And then next year, when you get new insurance money, we'll just work on the next worst tooth in your whole head. And only 5% of dentists would look you in the eye and say, Gabriel, you know what you need? You need a brand new smile makeover. I think we should take out all your old crap, put in some implants, do this, that, and the whole thing will be the same price as what one of your 13 new cars cost, $33,560. But man, I can't get dentists to even think that way. How do you do it?
Look, I think you're right. Dentists they don't like marketing and advertising. It's for a lot of dentists, marketing is a bad word. But I think that you can run your practice as a business, not in the negative way. And I think today, in order to succeed, you have to, I mean, those who succeeds, they realize that marketing is not a bad words and is not a bad things. And today, with all the competition you mentioned before, you have to work in as a business. You have to set goals. You have to work according to annual business plan, and you have to set a budget, advertising budget. You have to train your staff with sales. And yes, you need to do also sales, but I mean, it's not a bad thing. I mean, it's not a bad thing. Look, Toyota is a very good company that give high value for her clients, and she run as a business. I mean, it's nothing bad with this. And I know a lot of dental practices that run as a business, and it's okay. I mean, it's not a bad things.
It's a weird cultural thing with dentists. I mean, they just don't like to think of the money word. I love you always talk about the 5 critical principles to achieve business success in dental practices. You say it's all about the impression, patient retention, new checkups, focusing on the numbers, a winning front desk team. Let's talk about the first one. It's all about the impression.
Before that, I would like to talk about this is a tactics thing that we're gonna talk about, but I wanna talk about the strategic things before that create a business success. And the first thing that I mentioned that is you have to run your practice as a business and not as a practice. I mean, and I mentioned, I mean, to adapt, you need to adapt a business issues and to adapt it to your practice. Second, I realized that, the second question, important question is, do you think you deserve to succeed? It's a very, very important question because I think my experience shows that a lot of dentists, they don't feel that they deserve to succeed. I mean, they think only medical and not a business. And I'll give you a funny example. And in my seminar that I do, in my seminar, I always choose 2 dentists from the crowd, from the same city. And I ask them, how much you charge for a filling? And let's say the seminar is in Moscow, and Sergey say 3,000 ruble, and Alexei send 7,000 ruble. So I ask the crowd, tell me why Sergey charged 3,000 ruble and Alexei charged 7,000 ruble. I mean, it's a filling. It's a basic treatment. And why there is such a difference? So the crowd usually say, hey, it's because of the quality and technology. But I say, hey, it's a basic treatment. And the answer is that Alexei think he deserves 3,000 and Sergey think he deserves 7,000. And that's the only difference. So what's one of the most important things to succeed is to deserve that the feeling that you deserve to succeed after all of those many years that you study dentistry, and for the fact that you're working very, very hard.
That's very, very well put. It is a game in their head. I mean, if they think selling dentistry, I mean, they even say like, well, I didn't go to 8 years of school to be a used car salesman. I'm like, well, first of all, how did you even go to used cars? Why didn't you go to new cars? I mean, it is a lot of self. A lot of our limits are just in our own head. Diagnosing the paper book. The pocketbook. They actually get it wrong because like where I live in Phoenix, Arizona, there's a city called Scottsdale where everybody thinks all the rich people live, right? And if you saw 10 BMWs in Scottsdale, 9 of them would be leased and the other one would be financed 5 years. But when you go into the suburbs like Glendale and Chandler and Mesa, if you saw a Mercedes Benz or a BMW, it's probably paid in cash. And the older people that I know that have the most money, I mean, that I know for a fact have 3 million, 10 million. Hell, Dan Carney, the founder of Pizza Hut. I mean, if you went and saw him in Wichita, he'll have on a 20-year-old pair of plaid pants, some Cadillac he bought 20 years ago. I mean, these older rich people, that the young dentists look at them and say, well, you probably just want to pull that tooth, don't you? And then they see some young fake it till you make it with max out credit cards driving a Beamer, and then they try to sell them a $50,000 new treatment plan. But the bottom line is, you just can't diagnose the pocketbook. And if I went to the doctor and I found out that I went to you and you were my doctor and you thought to yourself, well, I can't tell Howard that he has diabetes and cancer and erectile dysfunction, so I'm just gonna talk about the diabetes. No, I'd want the full case. I'd want you to sit down and tell me everything that's wrong and present the whole case. But they diagnose the pocketbook. They diagnose that you can't afford this. I mean, they basically shoot themselves in the foot 5 times before they walk in the room. How do you get their head in the right game?
I think, and you mentioned it. It's the first critical principle that I want to talk about. It's all about the impression and the trust between you and your patients. And if he trusts you, so he will go for whatever you recommend. Of course, if he has the money. But I want to talk about the impression of the importance of the impression. Look, in dentistry, there is a big paradox. There is a big paradox, and the paradox is that the most important parameter for the patients when it comes to choose a dentist or a dental clinic, dental practice, is the professionality. Okay, that's the most important things when everybody comes to choose a doctor. But the big paradox is that you have no way or no tools to know whether you are good, whether you're a professional dentist or not. So it's a big part. From the one hand, that's the most important for him, and the other hand, he don't know if you're good or not. So he judge you and all the clinic by the conduct of the clinic, the management of the clinic, and according to that, he will decide if you're professional or not. If it comes to the appointment, and the appointment was at 4, and he get in 4:45, so for him, you're not professional. I mean, and these things, the impression in when you sell a service is a critical thing for the success of the dentist.
So if my doc, I mean, my doc wants to be old school doc. I mean, he's thinking about Pierre Fauchard and France, G.V. Black, and he's thinking of old school, the glory days where you just hung up your name on a shingle and you had patients and everybody trusted you and all that kind of stuff. And now, 3 decades later after I graduated from school, it's competitive. It's a business. You have to market
Yeah.
to survive. You have to present treatment. I think presenting the treatment is just ethical. I think it's horrible that you wouldn't tell someone. I mean, I always recommend complete diagnosis and treatment plan. I mean, you should tell them they have 11 cavities, they have gum disease. You should tell them the whole thing. You don't take bite wings and just cherry pick it and start off with something low cost, but they're going to have to run it like a business, and they're going to have to advertise. They're going to have to attract new patients. They seem to, I've noticed this about advertising. If you're a young kid, you always bring your own baggage to the table, right? When I roll up and start talking to you, you know, I'm an old guy from Kansas. You know, you bring your baggage. So if they're young, they're on TikTok and what's the one that starts with an I? Instagram.
Instagram, yeah.
Yeah. If they're older and they still go out to the mail every day and get their mail with all the junk mail, they do direct mail. It seems like when I listen to dentists advertising, they're always advertising of what they do, what they respond to. If I'm an older guy and I read the newspaper and I do direct mail, they do that. And if you're just got out of school and you have an Instagram account, you want to try to build your whole practice on Instagram. But then the patients, they're spread out between birth to 100 years old. So if you're a 30-year-old dentist and you're going to try to build your whole practice on Instagram, well, I guarantee you, my mom's not on Instagram. So how do you see a big marketing bias based on the dentist age and what they're doing in their own life?
Yeah, I mean, look, every dentist has his target. I mean, you don't need millions of people. You need a few good treatment plan every month, and you can build your patient from Instagram and for referral and for the existing patient that make recalls and stuff like that. But I want to tell you something about advertising. A lot of dentists think that advertising is a bad word. I mean, they feel like I don't know. Do I need advertising? They feel like it's not their league to use advertising. But let me tell you something very, very simple. Around your practice right now, there is hundreds and thousands of people that realize that they need to have a dental care. Now, the only things that separate between you and them is the fact that they don't know that you exist. So mainly the advertising mainly the effect of the advertising is to let people know that you exist and they welcome for a checkup. That's it. I mean, and if you don't do that, you're losing a lot of business.
So, marketing, some people, myself included, think that marketing and advertising kind of ends up like a drug addiction, in the fact that if you're in a big city and look at the hygienist. If you load up a hygiene schedule, let's say a hygienist works Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. She works 5 8-hour days. It would only take about 25 new patients a month for less than 5 years, and she would be filled up with 1,000 people that she cleans twice a year. But you come back in 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 40 years later, he still only has that one hygienist. And it's kind of like a cup of coffee. He's been pouring coffee into that coffee cup for 40 years, and every drop of coffee that comes in, some other coffee has to come out. And I almost think that a lot of people don't try to clean up their act and try to find out, well, why do these patients not come back? Is it evenings, weekend, price, attitude, staff? But they just keep marketing through their problems. Whereas I go to, when I drive to Las Vegas from here, 6 hours, I cross the Hoover Dam. They built a dam. Nobody's getting through that dam, and they've backed up that water for 100 miles. That would be 5 hygienists going full time. So how do you balance between I'm marketing just to replace all the people that you pissed off and ran off versus just trying to keep customers for life?
I think you should work, you should combine, you should always do retention and work on your existing patients, and you also have to always get a new patient. I mean, you need to combine between those things. But I think it's a huge, as you know, it's a huge problem of dental practices is the retention. And I think people don't come to hygienist treatment not because of the price and not because of the price, or they don't care about their health. The main reason, and its research show that the main reason that people do not come to hygienist treatment and periodic checkup, it's because they don't think it's necessary. Okay? And you should work on this problem. I mean, if you educate them that they have to come to hygienist treatment and a periodic checkup, they will continue to come every 6 months to the hygienist treatment. And I think that's one of the problems of a lot of dental practices. But look at for example, the periodontist. The periodontist, they take the hygienist treatment more seriously, and they tell to their patient, look, you have to come every 6 months, because if you don't, you might lose, it will be more damage, etc., etc. So they have their hygienists are much more busy than the JPs. So I think it's in your hand. The retention, it's in your hand. If you educate your patient to come every 6 months for hygienist treatment.
If you look at the stock market for the last gazillion years, they build their companies a lot through mergers and acquisitions. They buy other offices. In fact, just the other day, Heartland Dental, one of the biggest the biggest DSO in America. Let's see, Rick Workman. Where did I put that down? Rick Workman the other day, he just bought, announces the, what was the name of that? American Dental. Here, I put it right here. Yeah, Dr. Rick E. Workman, DMD, founder and executive chairman of Heartland Dental, announces strategic transaction with American Dental Partners Incorporated. ADPI, it says the transaction brings together two industry leaders, blah, 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 blah. American Dental Partners, Inc. is a DSO that supports 23 dental group practices spanning 278 locations across 21 states. Whenever I see, I've seen this so many times, okay, so that's a big macro example in a big country, but let's go down to the small cities. A lot of times I'll go to a town and it's only like 10,000 people, and there's only like 4 dentists in the town. I mean, usually a town of 10,000, would have a dentist for every 1,000, because the average dentist in America has 2,000 patients, but every small town, the draw in the rural is equal to the size of the town. So a town of 10,000 has another 10,000 draw, so that's 20,000. They have 10 dentists, that's 2,000 each. But in some of these towns, there'll be some really smart, business savvy guy like you, and when he sees the old guy retiring, he says, well, I'm not going to let him sell that to some young whippersnapper and come in here and compete. He buys the practice, rolls it into his, and usually the selling doctor thought he wanted to retire, but they always come back part-time because they're like, well, I think I'm going to need a new truck, and my wife wants to redecorate the house, and blah. So they come back, and then 5 years later, the next 65-year-old's getting retired. He buys out. So he started in this town with 10 dentists, for 10,000, and you come back 25 years later, now that town has 10,000, and there's only like 4 offices, and his office has like 5 dentists, every old guy that sold. And anytime I meet a single office that's doing 4 or 5 million a year, where the owner doc is taking home $500,000, $600,000, $750,000 a year. It's always done through mergers and acquisitions. But dentists, they almost never do that. So my question is, why does Wall Street live off mergers and acquisitions? And why do dentists just never see it? I mean, some old guy that's almost crippled sells his office to like a 30-year-old guy that runs a marathon. So it just backfires. Now the competition's 10 times bigger in his backyard. But why do you think dentists don't do M&A activity?
First of all, maybe you know that Israel is the most competitive place in the world in dentistry. In Israel, we have a dentist on every 750 people. Okay?
Wow.
One dentist on 750 people. So imagine yourself who I give consulting. I mean, it's the highest competition place in the world. Look, I think the competition will raise up and up in the years. All over the world, and I believe I have a different thought about selling a practice. I believe that as a dentist, you have enough time in your career to make a huge money. I mean, to make a lot of money. And by the age of 65, if you're working in the right way, you don't need do this kind of sales to sell the practice and all of this, because today with the marketing tools, a dentist can buy their patients. I mean, they can buy a patient if they invest money on advertising and stuff. So to buy a reputation for other dentists, many times it's not worth it. So my advice to always to dentists is make a lot of money in your practice, and don't think about I will sell the practice and sell my reputation.
So that the other thing I notice about Israel the most is that the Soviet Union, there's a lot of people in Israel that I met that were from Russia, Russian descendants. What percent of the people in Israel do you say have Russian? I shouldn't say Russian, but Soviet Union, Soviet bloc, the whole USSR. What percent would you say?
It's about 10%, 10, 15%. We had okay.
And what I mean by that is that in the Soviet Union, the dentist was just a branch of medicine. It was like you go to the same 4 years of college, you go to the same med school, and then you may decide to go on into dermatology. I go into dentistry or stomatology, and I love that system so much more because if I injure, dentist, it's all surgery. We work in an operatory, whereas a family physician, they're just listening and they're writing notes and prescriptions. But if I lose an eye, I no longer have two-dimensional, I can't do dentistry, or I lose an arm, or my hand starts shaking or something like that. But in Russia, it was so cool because it's really easy for them to realize, okay, I can't do dentistry anymore, but I'm going to go back and do a residency in dermatology or something like that. But what was even better is that when I was in the Israeli DSOs, they were all part of a hospital chain, whereas in America, none of them are part of a hospital chain. And talking to dentists, I would say to them, I'd say, well, how do you like working with this DSO? And they say, oh, it was great because I had a 6-year-old girl in here the other day, and she had bruises on her arms. So I sent my assistant down the hall, and they brought in another doctor. And before she was done with her dental appointment, we had already diagnosed she had leukemia. And I just thought, holy moly. It's just a better concept for the patient that the dentist is part of the medical arena. And I've only seen this in USSR countries, Russia, all those countries. In Israel, every DSO that I spent the day with was part of a hospital. And in America, there's none of that. Do you see that? Am I right on that? Or do you see that?
First of all, it's 80% from the dental market in Israel. Dental care in Israel, it's private practices, small one and big ones. By the way, there is no chains in Israel. I mean, it's all private practices. In United States, it's different. There is a lot of chains of dental practices, but the private practices in Israel, they are direct connection with hospitals. So when they need, when they need to involve the hospital, so they work very directly. And by the way, you talk about Russia. Russia is the first country that I went to do a lecture. And it was funny because I said, no way that in Russia, what I do here in Israel would work in Russia. I teach in my seminar, I teach how to double your sales within 3 months. And I say it's a method, it's 8 hours seminar that I teach what to do step by step, and it's working. And I said no way that it's work with in other countries because every country it's different. And it was a huge surprise because what I realized that the same problems of dentists is all over the world, the same problem, the same question, the same things. There is a little bit, a little bit change, the attitude. And for example, in Russia, if you bargain on the price, they don't ask for discount. In the Middle East, they ask more, but in basic, all over the world, it's the same things. They have the same problems, the same questions, and it's amazing. And you see it too because you also traveling around the world and see the dentistry around the world.
There's some very interesting trends. The ADA. Health Policy Institute, they have the best economist in the world, Marco Vukacek. He's just amazing. But he's showing how the percentage of dentists in private practice who are owners by age group is it's shrinking down. Like if you're under 35, in 2005, it was 49%. Now it's dropped to 30%. If you're under 35, so it's basically gone from 50 to 30, it's dropped 20%. If you're 35 to 44 in 2005 was 93%. Now that is 70. Now that's 89%. But what do you think of the steadily declining percentage of dentists in private practice who are owners?
First of all, not everyone, not every dentist. You can be a very good dentist, but a bad owner. I mean, not everybody can be a successful owner. I mean, it's required different skills to be an owner. And by the way, there is something very important about the age of the dentist. I think the money time of dentist is 35, 40 to 60. That's the money time. That's the real money time of the dentist, because until the age of 35, they train themselves with to be better dentists, and they gain self-confidence, and they start to build their patients database, and the money time is 35 or 40 to 60, and that's the money time that they can earn a lot of money. I mean, and I by the way, I'm not suggesting for dentists to be honored in age of 25 or 27. I mean, first of all, they need to practice to feel self-confidence, more self-confidence in their treatments, and to improve their skills. And in the late age, it's better for them to own their dental practice.
It seems to be a lot of people attribute that the change in demographics is because we've gone from like a mostly all male profession to now half the class is females. Do you think changing from mostly males to females, is that the same change happening in Israel? Like right now, if you go to the dental schools, half the class are women. Is that what you see in Israel?
I think the women are very good dentists. I mean, by the way, a lot of women in Israel, dentists, they start with cosmetic treatment. And yeah, I see it in Israel. I see it in Israel also. And by the way, I think women's are they can be a better owners of dental practices, because they're more sensitive, and they will work better with the staff. I see a lot of successful women dentists in Israel.
But do you think less women will want to be an owner and more women will want to be an employee, or do you think that's crazy and has nothing to do with it? Or
I mean, it depends. You know, when they're young and they have kids, you know, to take care of, it's not easy for them to be owners. But in the late age, there is a lot of more and more women become an owner of dental practices.
sorry, I'm a slow note taker. I'm taking a bunch of notes on you, and I'm a slow typer. My gosh.
You're multitask.
So your website is dentalmarketing.co.il. Dentalmarketing.co.il. What are my homies gonna find on your website? By the way, actually, if you type in it'll go to it's EN for English.
Ian for English, yes, yes.
dentalmarketing.co, not .com, .co.il. But what are my dentists going to find when they go to dentalmarketing.co.il?
First of all, they will find lots of articles about management and marketing dental practices. Second, they will find about my seminars overseas. But I have to admit, 95 of my business is the business consulting. I mean, the book and the seminar, it's nice, but it's only something like 5% of my business. And so my website talks about how we can coach dental clinics around the world. Today, we do it by Zoom, online meetings, but that's my main business. By the way, we coach hundreds of dental practices in Israel and around the world. And all what's written in the book and in articles, it's based on the experience of this coaching.
Interesting. Not to change topics completely, but to change topics completely, we're talking about you got to run it like a business. You got to do marketing. You got to present treatment. You have to do all these things like that. But Kyle, I remember I was going with that analogy. The natural selection we're talking about from Europe, natural selection, all that stuff. It's the natural selection of a dentist. No one gets into dental school unless they get A's in calculus, physics, geometry, and trig. And that's a natural selection, not to get some great extrovert, some talkative guy. I mean, basically, these are the nerds and geeks who sat in a library for 4 years in undergrad while all their friends were going to parties and drinking and dating and having girlfriends. And my guy is trying to do the difference between a cosine and a tangent in his head in geometry. So everybody that gets in had to get A pluses in all the nerd geek math, physics, chemistry. And then when he comes out, that's not the way you select someone who's got to lead a team and go in there on a new patient and shake their hand and press the flesh like they're running for mayor. So every filter set was to get some introvert geek in the library, and now he has to lead a team. So whenever I talk to dentists, I said, well, what really stresses you out the most? It's always the staff or the patients. It's basically people. And then I say, well, when are you the most happy? And he says, when I'm sitting at home alone drinking a beer with the lights out. And it's like, okay, so how do you get that my dentist only got to the dental party because he got A's in calculus, physics, chemistry, and biology. And now he realizes he should have been the sorority boy with a personality and all that stuff. And now he's got to lead a staff. He's got to deal with patients. How do you get his mind to get into people gear out of chemistry gear?
Look, I mean, those people need help. I mean, if they have to realize their weaknesses. Okay, they have to realize that they're not good in marketing and they're not good with treating right their staff and stuff like that. So they should have people that will coach them, will help them how to run their business. I'll give you an example. I'll give you a small example. You know, sometimes we comes to, by the way, it's not only me, I'm only the presenter. I have a staff, 5 people who work with me and doing the coaching to the dental practices. But I'll give you an example. We comes to dental practices, and you see their prices. They not working in the right prices. They work for many years in very low prices, and because they didn't ask, they didn't know what's going on around. And when you take external coaching and consulting, you can improve your conduct and to have a business success. I mean, those people that don't understand, or they don't have the skills of marketing, they must have a consulting and coaching, and so they can succeed.
Another thing that's in their mind, right? Say this are people, they're afraid of their staff, they're afraid of their patients. Another one they're all saying, especially now because of COVID-19, is their overhead is going up. I mean, the PPE, the masks, I mean, our costs are going up. And America is under, I don't know how it is in Israel, but America is seeing inflation again for the first time ever. I mean, the average in just this year, I mean, we're only in May 18th. In 5 months, the average home has gone up 17%. Oil's gone from 20 to 60. Even little old ladies who aren't reading the Wall Street Journal are saying, is my grocery store ripping me off? Everything I buy, they're raising the prices on. And I'm like, I think inflation's here, but their overhead's going up, and they're locked in to these contracts where, someone else is setting their fee. They're part of an insurance company. So, an insurance, like say Delta or Blue Cross Blue Shield or Connecticut General. So they've already agreed to these prices. And so they're locked in on their price. They're in a very capital-intensive business that thinks they need a laser and a CBCT and a CAD cam and all this stuff like that. And their overhead's going up, and there's inflation is back. And they're saying to me, like, my God, how do you bring down your overhead in this type of a storm? First of all, are you seeing inflation where you're at in Israel?
Let me tell you, Howard. When dentists talk to me about those things, the inflation and the security situation in Israel and the pandemic, and I always tell them, forget about all those things. I mean, there is no end for this thing. Yeah, and anyway, you cannot do anything in this situation. Forget about those things. Let's focus. Let's see what we can do to close more 2 or 3 or 4 new treatment plan. I mean, I think the inflation and all of the other things, it's excuses that we have nothing to do with this. And we, as an owner of practice, you should not be bothered of those things. You should focus all the time, what can you do to improve the business? And in these things you can control, and that's the focus should be on these things.
Well put. So basically, so let me see if I'm saying you right. So if your overhead's $1 and you do $1 in dentistry, your overhead is 100%. But if you double your dentistry to $2, now your overhead drops to 50%. So are you saying really the best way to lower your overhead is to increase your production?
Of course. I mean, that's the only thing you can do. I mean, you cannot change the inflation now, and you cannot change the security situation, or I don't know, the pandemic. And look, for example, in the pandemic year that we're now, there is the dentist that say, oh my God, this pandemic, I mean, I cannot work, it's bad for the business. And there is my clients, I always tell them, hey, it's opportunity. This pandemic, it's opportunity. And they raise their sales in 25, 30, and even 40%. So it's all question of the approach. You go to attack or you go to defense. And when you start to play defense, you know what's happened when you play defense. So I think every practice should always focus how you get a new patient, how you do the retention, how you how you make, by the way, the staff, how you make you raise their motivation to work for you, that the practice will succeed. I mean, those, if you focus on those things, you can make a lot of money and you can build a successful dental practice. But if you focus on the inflation and things that anyway you have nothing to do with, so
I want to hold your feet to the fire on one more overhead question, because I know my homies and I know how they think. And one of the things that really bothers them is, when I go spend an hour in an operatory and I do a molar root canal, I mean, I'm going to get $700 for it. If I go in there for an hour and I pull 4 wisdom teeth, I'm going to get another $700,000, $800,000, $900,000. But they're paying their hygienist $40 an hour, and she's in there for an hour, and the cleaning's only $60. And he's like, my God, I got 2/3 overhead just on her labor before I go into rent, mortgage, equipment, all that kind of stuff like that. And it just drives them crazy. And then the hygienist gets a cancellation. So now she's sitting there for $40 an hour with no revenue coming in. And the patient before, they paid her $40 an hour for a $60 cleaning. So will you address hygiene, productivity, and efficiency where it's a much more competitive game of overhead?
it's a great point. But let me tell you this. The problem is that you pay for your hygienist per hour. You should pay her per procedure, per treatment. I mean, by the way, it's in my book. I mean, it's one of the big mistake of the dentistry. Why you pay? There is 3 different paid. One per hour that it's not. I mean, I not recommend it anyway. I mean, because what you mentioned, but the other paid, it's by percentage, and it's also a big mistake, because if you raise up the price, so you need to share with your doctor or your hygienist, you need to pay per treatment. And if you pay to your hygienist per treatment, you're not going to have these problems.
And one last
And by
thing.
the way, excuse me, and also to the doctors. To the doctor, you should pay him, but he's not your partner. I mean, you should pay him good, okay? But you are not a partners. You should pay him. He doing a crown. He does a crown. You pay him for the crown. I mean, per procedure, per treatment, it's the best thing for both sides.
So there's a lot of this pandemic has actually, in the United States, it's very, very weird, but 5% of the population decided, you know what, I'm done. I'm just going to retire. I mean, people who thought, well, I'm going to retire at 65 and they're like 60. And just a lot of people just said, you know what, I'm done. I'm just going to retire. And a lot of dentists are now thinking about retirement. I mean, during the pandemic, you wanted to retire so you didn't have to learn out how to the PPE, the COVID, the air filters, all the new protocols. I get that. But a lot of dentists are thinking about retirement, and a lot of them think, well, I know what I'm going to retire on. I'm going to sell my practice for $100 trillion billion. And then when they go out and sell it, it sells for a lot less. And then the tax man comes in and they take out a whole big a chunk. But how would you advise older dentists? What should older dentists be thinking about as they're winding down their career and want to sell their practice in retirement? And how should they make this practice look? Because in real estate, I'm in the desert. And in real estate, the real estate agents swear that if you try to fix your home up to sell it by putting in a swimming pool for $1, it's not going to add $1 to the value of your house, and you're not going to get it back out. And some dentists are thinking, well, if I'm going to sell my practice, I need to change to lasers or digital x-rays or this or that or this, that. So what should he be thinking about as he's getting older and trying to position his practice for a sell? And then the other end, he's going to sell that to the new kids. And when I came out of school, I started my own practice from scratch. I had it open in 133 days. But the young kids, they just want to go from job to job to job to job for five. You see them 5 years out of school and they've had 5 different jobs. So they seem to be waiting a lot longer to buy a practice and have a baby, where I always recommended, the best time to start a practice and make a baby is before you think about it. I made 4 boys in 60 months, and by the time I realized this is really not a great idea, I was already done. I already had my practice, I had my family, and now they by waiting 5 years, they start thinking about everything involved with having a kid and starting a practice, and then they start talking themselves out of it. So I'm almost like, don't think about it. Just get married, have a bunch of kids, and start your own practice without even thinking about it. So how would you coach both ends of this lifestyle? The old guy going out and the new guy coming in?
As I mentioned before, and I'll say it again, before we're going to talk about the retirement, we're going to talk about the young dentist. And as I said before, I think you should do you should focus on the age of 35 to 60, 65 to make a lot of money. That's what you should focus, and that's the time you can make a lot of money. And if you work in the right way as a dentist and as a business, you can make a lot of money. So the selling of your practice will be only a bonus. I mean, it's not money that you depends on. Now, I'll tell you one thing. In the 15 years of my experience in dentistry, I was involved in a lot of selling and buying dental practices. And today it's very hard to build to sell a reputation for a lot of money. I mean, it's not easy. I mean, you mentioned that a lot of and a lot of accountant and evaluate the practice with 1 million or 2 million, and when you want to sell it, nobody willing to pay the price. But the best way to sell a practice with reputation, it's to adapt a young dentist or young kid, as you call it, and to work with him a few years and to let him buy your reputation. The only problem is to find the right the right dentist, the right young dentist, and you need a lot of luck in this situation. So I return and say it again: make money, make good money in your career. It's much easier than to find the right young dentist that will buy your dental practice.
I know we've gone over an hour, and I thank you so much for this interview. I still have a few more questions. Can I ask a couple overtime questions?
Yeah, yeah.
You talked about that you would pay a hygienist on productivity, and you would pay your associate dentist on productivity, as opposed to just an hourly wage, and that would have a more skin on the game. What about staff? Do you recommend staff bonuses? Do you think that motivates the staff?
Of course, of course. By the way, in my book, there is all this kind of pain, and you have to pay your staff bonuses. And look, you have to have your staff with motivation to make the sale, to not losing the patient, and nobody invent other way than to pay a bonuses. Now it's very simple. You're doing an average, I don't know, 100,000 a month, and you tell your staff, okay, that's the average. You get, I don't know, $25 per hour, or I don't know what's the salary over there. You pay them hour, and you tell them, when the practice make 150, you get bonus on, I don't know, $500. And when the practice makes 200, you make $1,000 bonus. I mean, they have to work with the bonuses. They have to know every day what's the sales turnover. You have to set goals, monthly goals, and to ask them to achieve these goals. You know, I said when your staff work without knowing what's the sales turnover every day of the month, it's like a basketball player that plays without knowing the score. I mean, it's wrong that your staff doesn't know. They don't know if you had a good month or a bad month. They should work with goals and with bonuses. And I said again what I said before. It's how a business organization work, and that's how dental practice should work.
I could listen to you for 40 days and 40 nights. I really enjoyed your book, enjoyed everything, and I owe this all to Rafi Fisher. My gosh, thank you, Rafi, for fixing this up and everything. And my gosh, you got your work cut out. It's dentistry is getting more and more competitive. I think the need for consultants is going to go off the charts. And
that's good for me. That's good for me.
Yeah, and I got to tell the young kids, you know, when you this month, America is going to have 6,500 new dentists graduate from dental school this month. And when you come out of school, I just want to remind all the kids that you became a doctor in dentistry. You still don't know shit about legal. Don't sign some contract without a lawyer. You don't know anything about real estate. Don't sign some 5-year lease on a real estate building. And my gosh, there's, I'm not saying Gabriel is an old man, but there's guys out there that know so much more than you about everything in business, and don't reinvent the wheel. Get his book. It's only had 5-star ratings on Amazon. My gosh, it's called Turn Your Dental Practice into a Successful Business. And what's also interesting with Gabriel is this is time tested in several countries around the world. Humans are humans, people are people, dentistry is dentistry, and I think business, geometry, and economics and calculus are the same anywhere you go around the world. So focus on the business of dentistry, because those who can do and those who can't teach. And you just finished 8 years being taught by dentists who don't own their own practice. So get out there and learn the business, or you're never going to be profitable in what you do. Gabriel, thank you so much for spending an hour of your life with me today talking to my homies. It was an honor to podcast you.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. And I want when you come the next time to Israel, we go for dinner, and I will happy to meet you.
Well, I'm actually right now I'm on a liquid diet, so you'll have to take me to the bar. I can only do beer.
It's even better. It's
okay.
even better.
All right.
But I wanna say something for the end of this podcast. I wanna say something. I think it's very easy to succeed. It's easy. I mean, when we come to dental practices and we double and triple their sales and their profit in very easy way. You just need to work with the system. Running a dental practice successful, that it's a system. There is a system to run a successful dental practice, exactly like to do a root canal. There is a system to do a successful root canal. If you don't work with the system, the root canal will fail. So everybody should find a way, stick with the system, and when you stick to the system, you work with this system. It's very easy to succeed with all the competitions and et cetera, et cetera.
And I just want to say one thing. Thank you to Israel. When my father died, my mom was in a slump, and it wasn't too good. And a couple of years later, I decided to send her and her girlfriends. Their whole life is the Catholic Church, and they had this trip to Israel, and it was a package trip. It was like 10 days, everything. Holy moly! If that wasn't the greatest vacation of her life, it made her blossom. I think it made her go back 20 years in time. I can still remember her calling me, I just saw where Jesus was born. All this stuff. But that was the greatest de facto thing that I think that ever happened to my mom, is 10 days in Jerusalem. And everybody treated her amazing, and she had so much fun. And now she wants me to send her back with my sisters that are nuns. So now I'm going to have to, and I just went there in December, but unbelievable history. That's got to be the coolest place in the world to visit. I can't think. I mean, the only thing that even competes with it would be the Rome. I mean, between Rome and Jerusalem, I mean, that is just, my God, that's
Jerusalem is very special city. You feel in the air that you are in special place. Okay, I would love to see you. I would love to see you in Israel, and take care.
All right, have a great day. Thank you so much.